Get me out of LA. That's enough of this place today. I mean, I spent this morning, I got there at 9:30 and I left at 1:30. So 4 hours watching a federal judge yell at elected officials about a homelessness system that's not working without the presence of probably the most important key person in that hearing, the leader of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LAHSA. Felicia Kellums Adams apparently had somewhere better to be than federal court today. From what I heard, she's in Boston. I don't know what she's doing in Boston, but apparently Boston was more important than saving her agency. And it's probably a good thing that more of the council members and supervisors weren't there to watch this, what was called a slow-moving train wreck, in which, people are literally dying on the streets of LA. The number has gone up, and we seem to be rejoicing that only 7 or 8 people a day die on the streets of Los Angeles. Apparently that plateauing, as they called it, is an acceptable outcome, because otherwise nobody knows where the money went. We're talking billions of dollars. Some money is actually owed back by law, and apparently it's being only very, very slowly recouped. So that was quite the show. Karen Bass was not happy to be there. She wouldn't agree either to allowing the Controller's Office to audit Inside Safe or any other mayoral program in the future. It was a shit show. And I'm not sure if LAist or LA Times has their story up yet. I imagine it's coming. The media in some ways has turned into the only thing that actually gets anybody to do anything in Los Angeles, it seems. And this was something that Judge David Carter was speculating about, right? That really the sensitivity is to the media going after you. Otherwise, it's business as usual. And business as usual in Los Angeles means a lot of money going nowhere while people die. And the degree to which some of this is just laughable, it gets really, really, grim, macabre. Like, they have a system to assess, who the most vulnerable people are, who have to be housed immediately, but then it doesn't house those people. Right? There's literally entire software systems devoted to prioritizing getting people off the streets by risk. And yet, the numbers of dead people have gone up. Obviously, the system does not work. And, when we think about people who are homeless or unhoused, we're really talking about a very vulnerable population a lot of the times. We're talking about, sometimes women, children, seniors, people who are disabled, veterans. It's not all, just dangerous, male transients like people make out. A lot of times it's people who need help, and they are not getting that help. They are being left to fend for themselves. And this is despite billions of dollars being budgeted for them, directed their way. It's simply unsustainable. And so Judge Carter didn't want to come down on them too hard today. He basically told them to fix it. And there's supposed to be another hearing in May to address this. I mean, this has been going on now for years and years and years. I mean, we went through the history today. The history of audits in LA flagging a failing homelessness system go back to 2001. It's not news to anybody that we're bad at doing this. And yet, practical solutions, like coming up with at least a model for what, a homeless shelter and homeless services system should look like, aren't really on the discussion table. If you've ever seen somebody threaten somebody else very seriously, that happened today. It happens in a courtroom where there's no cameras. Personally, if you ask me, I think the cameras should be there. And, shout out to anybody who cares about this issue. It really is an important one, and one where we have to ask questions, because I might go home and have a bed tonight, but a lot of people in this county don't. And their ability to get even the basics right, like, even a temporary roof over their head, much less, some basic support, it gets really, really limited really fast. That safety net that you like to think is there for you is not there. It's really quite astounding. So that was like part one of my day. Part two, I had to go to a funeral for a really good person. And, it's just sad to see people, passing away younger than they should. Cancer is a very real and deadly thing to go through. So, singing the blues, it's the LA blues. Not like Dodger blue, but LA that's real. Like real. Not like this fake like YouTube reality that some people create, like real. And it's one thing to like turn things into content. It's another thing to have, real reflection about what some of this means. And I've always been somebody who's, for real reflection, who wants, to have deep, thought about something rather than just, cheap shots. And like, certainly the criticism of, Judge Carter might be that he's taking cheap shots at the politicians. And if you haven't watched, the mayor of Los Angeles squirm, because she doesn't like, having her authority challenged, federal court might not be for you. So, I think that obviously it's not something that's easy to fix, but the idea that we can't be better at this than we are is really just kind of a betrayal. And it comes off that way. And like, people can get, angry and can get sad. And, the crazy part is the emotions that people have, it doesn't seem to matter sometimes. The politicians, they are who they are. They're going to run for re-election if they can. And that power that they have to be leaders, I go to these hearings and sometimes it just doesn't feel like they're there to lead. Like, I thought today was a disaster for Karen Bass. She should be happy that there was no cameras there, because her response to the idea that, locking arms on homelessness was a solution, was a slogan, was basically like, nah. And for what Inside Safe costs, to refuse to let it be audited by a relatively friendly controller was not a good look. So, I don't think the judge is trying to help Rick Caruso. Caruso's not going to do any better, but it was very, very confrontational. I would describe today's hearing at federal court as very confrontational. And I guess it's appropriate that there's clouds and, kind of blue skies today, but that was very, very charged. And I stayed for most of it. I missed like maybe the last like 5 minutes. But my commitment to this issue, goes deep, longer than any, long drive. And I think that to the extent that the politicians can come up with solutions, I hope they do. They seem to be moderately organizing a little bit better, but the reaction to some of the criticism was not productive. And the best part was the judge accusing the county of Los Angeles of delaying the release of its audit report so it could win more funding for homelessness last November. Measure A, your sales tax initiative. And that's going to make permanent a 0.5-cent increase in the sales tax. The money will start coming in on April 1, April Fools. And at that point, this idea, right, that there aren't resources, gets really, really laughable, because there's a bunch more money coming to the table. It's not necessarily a shortage of money. It's that they have money and they're not spending it well. So much of the money is getting siphoned off by service providers, and it's going to overhead, it's going to executive salaries, and that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to be paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars while they fail at their core mission of getting people off the streets. It's just not okay. That's not achievement. It's not accomplishment. And it is the reality of homelessness policy in Los Angeles that's happening. So the business lobby, LA Alliance, wanted the city to be put into receivership. They want the city and I think maybe the county too to be under a receivership, which would give an external agent control nominally over at least spending, if not potential things like construction of new housing developments. And the name that got floated was Ken Feinberg, who administered the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. But it didn't even seem like the LA Alliance had talked to Ken Feinberg to see if he would even want this job, because I don't know who wants that job. It's got to be the world's most difficult job to try to turn around a failing homelessness policy in Los Angeles County, and to do it quickly because, of course, the Olympics are coming here, and the World Cup, and the Super Bowl. And obviously, they can get rid of homelessness people for the Grammys, but doing it on a large scale for the Olympics, I don't know. And that's certainly, what the upper crust in Los Angeles wants. They don't want to see homeless people. But if you don't want to see them, where do they go? Do you warehouse them? Are you sending them elsewhere? What do you do with all of these people who don't have anything at all? And frankly, many of them need significant help, whether it's mental health care, drug treatment, or frankly, economic support. Because I think the biggest barrier that the unhoused face is in jobs. Nobody wants to hire somebody who is unhoused or formerly unhoused. It's like having stigmata. Like, I think, next to being a whistleblower, perhaps the worst thing you could be in LA is unhoused. And I wish I knew how to, I want a whistleblower hotline. I think that the fact that they can't even track the homeless service providers, much less set up effective accounting or oversight, certainly means that there's waste, fraud, and abuse happening. And I would really love to see all of the existing reports that have come in for waste, fraud, and abuse to the city controller's office fully investigated. I want that reviewed. I want to catch the people who are siphoning off money that we might not even know about, oftentimes illegally. And the F word, fraud, did come up. The judge basically encouraged the press to decide at what point, right, this is fraud, to be essentially stealing money from the homeless to pocket yourself, right? To take huge salaries. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, out of public taxpayer money, when your goal is to help people who have nothing. How is that acceptable? And I thought it was a big missed opportunity. I would be auditing executive compensation very, very specifically, because the average, homelessness outreach worker is making anywhere from $18 an hour to $25 an hour. They're not making $200,000. They're not making $300,000. So for the, the elite, essentially the homeless industrial complex, to swallow up all of this money, to be the poverty pimp, is, without even getting audited, is insane. They couldn't even get basics. They couldn't even get a consistent list of contracts out of LAHSA. And Judge Carter, to his credit, refuses to step foot inside LAHSA ever again. They're in a skyscraper. Apparently there's a water feature there. I've never been to their office. Now I would like to go. I would like to see the water feature at LAHSA. And I mean, whoever figures out where the head of LAHSA was today instead of federal court, why she's in Boston, is going to get a journalism medal. Why couldn't she be there? This has been a year of everybody's time. It's been $2.8 million in taxpayer money, and she can't even be bothered to show up. We had to wait for Karen Bass to show up this morning, and at least Karen Bass showed up. Quite uncomfortable. Marquise Harris Dawson, the president of the city council, was there. Eunice Hernandez was there. Catherine Barger, the chair of the county board of supervisors, was there. Controller Kenneth Mejia was there with his staff. And then Wendy Gruhl, who's at LAHSA on the board and is the former city controller, was there. But otherwise, it was a little thin on the VIPs. Not quite the turnout I thought was going to show up, considering, you know, what was on the table. And the fact that the judge didn't freeze spending, which I think is what he should be doing. He should be freezing the spending until they have an accounting system, is really perhaps too kind. If you're going to have a multi-billion-dollar budget going on, you know, and you can't track what you're doing with that money as far as getting results, your spending should be frozen. Like, you should not be in business, right? Like, if you don't achieve your goals regularly and you're blowing through your money, any other business would go out of business. So why is homelessness services different? Why is that different? And, you know, bless the LAPD, they're even less accountable. I mean, I would love to see an LAPD audit. I have yet to see the chief of the LAPD or anybody else from the LAPD brass show up to any of these hearings, even though LAPD is dealing with an unhoused crisis on a daily basis. Like, they don't seem to have any real investment in this policy. And I have some real questions for them about what, you know, why they couldn't provide data either. They provided very minimal data as far as what LAPD does with the unhoused. And one of the questions that came up is that they do in fact have that. And they just didn't provide it. And that's something I think is true. I know they have more data there because I've been poking around it. I've been investigating it, right? Does LAPD have more data on, you know, the amount of resources it spends on homelessness services calls? And I think it does. So the fact that they couldn't, you know, begin to provide that is really, again, part of making Los Angeles audit proof. So if you like audit in LA, right, you should want the audits. You should want people to be audited effectively. And auditing is its own, you know, real task. It's not just, you know, something that, you know, is a joking Scientology thing. It is an actual profession that people do. They are professional auditors. You know, they're supposed to be able to check your books and go, you have, you know, books that are in order. And nobody disputed today, right, that the books weren't in order. But the funny part was they actually tried to attack the auditors. They went, oh, well, we don't know about your methodology, and we don't know, you know, about your understanding of, you know, agreement X, Y, and Z. Anything to avoid full accountability. Anything to admit, right, that, frankly, even for this current batch of elected officials, that they are now years into this, and they don't have any real solution. We're figuring it out as we go along. And unfortunately, the longer this goes on, and the worse it gets, the harder it is to really confirm that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And LASA is now claiming, after they claimed last year there was a 10% drop in unsheltered homelessness, that they had another 5% drop. And they're doing this faster than ever. So, I mean, for them to, you know, have numbers so quickly after doing the annual point-in-time homelessness count, which was delayed this year because of the wildfires, it's very suspect. It's hard to trust those numbers when they're just getting pulled out of, you know, thin air. And apparently USC, which has been involved in this in the past, has not even cleared these numbers that they're putting out. They're playing politics with the count because they want to be able to say, you know, on any basis that things are getting better, right? Even though there's a whole lot of evidence, right? You know, from what people see right when they get off the freeway off ramp to, you know, what we hear from people who are in the unhoused community, this suggests that things aren't really getting better despite an enormous allocation of funds. And if you're wondering, like, Inside Safe, right, which moves people off the streets into motels, is the most expensive form of program that we have, right? It's more expensive than a tiny home. It's more expensive than a, you know, traditional shelter. And maybe it works a little bit more. That's kind of where we're at with that. But to watch Karen Bass refuse to agree to a future audit to follow up on this, you know, because of the city charter, Carter was yelling and screaming at the attorneys, and I don't blame him. Like, I want to yell and scream at attorneys too. Like, attorneys are not, you know, the solution always. A lot of times they're part of the problem. So this is what we're doing. This is Los Angeles. It's starting to get out of the blue hour and into the night. I think I'm in Orange County maybe already. Time to go. And like Orange County is marginally better than Los Angeles at dealing with this. Like they've had their own problems. Like they had a huge homelessness encampment in the Santa Ana River Wash next to Angel Stadium. And they went out and they did a bunch of outreach. They built homeless shelters and they got it done. So the idea that Los Angeles can't get better at this when other jurisdictions across the country are is really suspect. And it's just mind-boggling that we keep having these unproductive hearings. They're supposed to be meeting basically like school kids and figuring it out. But I think already you could tell that they were just looking for reasons to poke holes in the idea that something is wrong. Something is deeply wrong. We shouldn't be failing this bad. The excuses are piling up. And for the people who truly don't have anywhere to go, don't have any family to help them, the equation, right, that people from Pacific Palisades who've had their homes burned down are in the same predicament as people who have nothing is really insulting. Like, it should not be all, fire victims or not homelessness, right? Like, homelessness has been a problem before the wildfires. It's going to be a problem after the wildfires. Wildfires are not an excuse for not addressing the homelessness crisis. Like, that just doesn't hold up, right? Like, we should know, of course, that people who are destitute, who are living on the streets, who are trying to figure out their next meal right, are in a different situation than somebody whose home is burned down, who still has millions of dollars in assets potentially. It's just two different things. Like the wildfire, yes, a lot of people lost their homes, but they were in a less vulnerable position than people who already had nothing. And sometimes we're talking about kids. Like we're talking about kids who come out of the foster system, who don't have parents, who are the most vulnerable people to being trafficked for sex trafficking or labor trafficking. And, we are failing them. So the audacity for the city of LA to go, we're in an emergency situation because of the wildfires, therefore we can't keep getting it right on homelessness, when only a small fraction of the city is burned and the most wealthiest areas at that, it doesn't compute. It's a very disconnected argument. And the fact that we spent time today in federal court literally arguing about that is just a head scratcher. Absolutely a head scratcher. And shout out to Sassafras, who cares about this issue very much. Shout out to Audit LA, who also cares about this issue very much. I've watched Audit at City Hall go, watch the people showing up and going, how can I house my family, and try to help. Like, if you're just in it for yourself and you don't want to help anybody else, like, do your thing, be an entertainer, but don't, act like you're down for Los Angeles, because Los Angeles knows what's messed up. And it is this human crisis that we have on top of a political crisis that never ends. And our inability to deal with these issues in a mature and adult way is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And I'll be the first person, as a journalist, as somebody who worked in a very powerful institution in this city at the highest level, with sometimes an almost seemingly unlimited amount of resources. The fact that we can't target these resources more effectively to meet the critical needs of people so that they will not die. They will literally die on the streets. When we drive around and walk around Hollywood and you see those tents and those encampments, they're not there because they want to be. They don't have anywhere else to go. They cycle into the shelter, they cycle out of the shelter. And the reason they go out of the shelter is because there is no permanent housing for them. There's no job programs. The treatment programs, the quality sometimes is incredibly poor. And, you don't have to go through it to understand that misdiagnosing people, shuttling them from facility to facility just to hit your numbers, it happens all the time. The mental health programs that we have are not effective sometimes. Neither are the drug abuse ones. And our drug abuse problems are getting worse. Fentanyl is a serious problem. Supposedly MacArthur Park is getting better. Like that was brought up today, that MacArthur Park is getting better. But I don't know if people saw on the news what's going on in the city of Industry with this RV park, where apparently, at least according to the property owner, now these RVs that were parked there that have now turned into basically impromptu, homeless shelter dumping ground. This is a situation that's really symbolic of how broken this whole system is. And I mean, if somebody thinks they're just going to pit trailers out, right, and that people aren't going to try to use them as shelter, city of Industry. It's almost otherworldly. And I mean, we saw it in the news and we're just like, how is this happening? And like last January 7th, we were in court the same as we were today, talking about this, and this is what's happening. People are literally turning half-abandoned luxury trailers into homes because they don't have anywhere else to go. And I don't think anybody feels bad for the trailer company. For whatever reason, they felt like they could just dump those trailers there, that it wouldn't get occupied, and it's being occupied. And obviously it's not ideal to have trailers with mountains of trash piling up around it, but it's symptomatic of a system that does not work for people. I mean, I can tell you, after being evacuated from the wildfires, the only business that stepped up to the plate really was Hilton. Hilton put 7 nights on the table for every person who could go through 2-on-1. Otherwise, none of the other hotel chains did shit. They did little discounts. If you try to get winter shelter through LASA, you would be told that they were already out of motel vouchers, and that's like in January. So to try to funnel people, particularly from Altadena, who are not as wealthy as the people from the Palisades are, into the same system for the unhoused, and not know that it's a broken system. It's a broken system. It's totally broken. The way our markets are working here for housing, for jobs, for support services, it's extremely poor. And the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, he's invited to come attend this. I don't know if he will. I mean, he's apparently, too busy talking with Steve Bannon about things, and Charlie Kirk. But he should have been in Los Angeles today. If I was the governor, I'd have wanted to be there. And the judge, showed some restraint. He didn't, immediately appoint an outside receiver. He didn't freeze the fines. But I think, come May, I think he's going to have to do something. You can't threaten to crack down essentially on the politicians and go, nah, not good enough, and not do something. So we'll see what happens. It's an open book. The news coverage should be coming from today's hearing pretty soon. I'll read it like everybody else, and I'll conduct follow-up interviews, and I'll try to figure out how can I use my expertise to try to navigate this sort of failing governance process. And I mean, I talk to people just the same. I talked to several reporters today. I couldn't stick around and talk to the officials like I have in the past and be like, what do we start figuring out? Shout out to the controller's office. The controller's office is super cool. They talk to us. We talked to them. There was a productive communication line there, but they themselves have communicated now in open court that their auditing staff is actually getting reduced, and they think it's getting reduced because they don't like what their audits are finding. So you can't retaliate against the auditor. If you want the audit, you want the audit. You want that degree of transparency. But if your goal is to shut down the positive progressive forces in the city that do want to make things better, you're not going to improve anything. The progressives, they might be idealistic, they might be, fun, easy to make fun of, but at least, they want it to be better. Some of the other politicians, Tracy Park, for example, I don't know where Tracy Park was today. I was kind of hoping that she would be there just so she could get yelled at. I mean, if you didn't know, Tracy Park, who represents the West Side, has been blocking a planned development that's been literally talked about now for 6 years in Venice. She wants to build, and if you've watched, the Venice streams, right, you'll know that there's a serious homelessness problem in Venice. So they want to do this project called Venice Dell. It would be built on a parking lot, and it would even offset the parking lot with underground parking eventually. And it would have housing for the unhoused. It would have affordable housing. And yet the city of Los Angeles, because the councilwoman, in large part, and also because of the mayor too, well, they're not gonna let her off the hook, they are blocking the transfer of the land. So even though, right, the law in California says basically you can build housing, affordable housing, particularly, right, they are blocking this Venice Dell project. And the Attorney General of California, who in other cases has interceded and gone, no, you can't block housing in California, has not interceded in this. And he too should be invited to the next LA Alliance homelessness hearing. I would absolutely love to see Rob Bonta's explanation for why he is selectively enforcing the law. Because I asked them last time, after the last hearing, I asked them, hey, are you going to get involved in this case? Because this is the most well-known, planned homelessness project in Los Angeles. And he has the chance to make an example out of that, to say, no, you have to build the Venice Dell project. You can't not build homeless housing and affordable housing on what's already public property, a parking lot. And they have blocked this for 6 years. It's insane. It's insane. And everywhere else, right, people are literally being ordered, at the point of a judge to allow housing to be built. All sorts of projects have been approved. Why can't that one be approved? And so this is kind of like the debate was, if you have a receiver, right, you hire an outside entity, and there's firms that do receiverships, for things like mobile home parks, apartment buildings, right, where it's gone bankrupt or it's destitute, right, and the government takes it over. If you do that, where does this, how much authority do they have? Do they control the budget? Do they have the ability to order projects to be constructed? Like what does a receiver on homelessness policy look like? And I don't know. I don't think this Ken Feinberg guy is going to want this job. I mean, fixing this is an incredibly messy proposition. It's like in the past we've called it a big fat hand grenade, because it is such a huge issue for people here. And you don't need to, know everything about LA to know that we have a serious homelessness crisis. We have the most severe crisis probably in the entire country here. And, it's not to say it doesn't happen elsewhere, but elsewhere, they have more expensive solutions. Like, say, in New York, houses a lot of people in shelters. Elsewhere, like San Jose, they've, gone very aggressively on outreach to try to get people housed. San Diego's, doing, more too. So clearly LA can get it together. The fact that we basically have like grade school going on in a federal courthouse now for a year, and the class is not figuring out how to keep, get the teacher happy. It's hard to watch it, frankly. It's frustrating. And if you know anybody, right, who's been unhoused or is currently unhoused, you will know how much of a struggle it is to help anybody. The system runs you around, and here we have a system that is so impenetrable that nobody can figure it out. I have a master's degree in public administration, right? Like, I've been educated to try to figure this out, and it's taken me a year to really get inside of it and to understand, just how badly this is breaking down, to the point where I want to intercede. I want to go, how can we, get the city to want to address these solutions? And like on the question of audit, clearly, we have a city, charter reform commission. If they need to change the city charter to allow the controller to audit homelessness programs, that is a change that we can make. We'll make it happen. will make it happen 1,000,000%. And it's not so much to get the perfect spreadsheet or to, know the right that you're not going to get every, last person perhaps. But like we sent out a 60% goal and we're hitting 15%. So they wanted 60% off in a few years' time and we've got 15%. That is not good enough. And the cost of which, the cost that it's coming at is very high. Inside Safe is something like $114 a night. And right, a hotel room, a motel room is not cheap. And so, there's a big debate about if it's working, right? Putting people into motels and providing them, some services, with any luck, works. And there's some signs that it does. I mean, you're talking about a wait time of once you're in the motel of sometimes several hundred days. You're waiting 160 days after you go through Inside Safe to get to an interim housing, site, or and then something like 300 plus days for permanent housing. So can you imagine, like, if you had to spend 300 days in a motel room, how would you do? And the answer is a lot of people don't do very well in that. This is crazy. The express lanes are almost more jammed than the regular lanes as I go back to the desert. Because after being forced out by the wildfire on January 7th, like, the LA housing market is a little bit much. So I've abandoned LA for now. Long live, the Coachella Valley, the desert. And I mean, rent's probably like 30 or 40% less out there, but of course it's brutally hot during the summer and you have dust storms. I mean, people too, they'll say all the time, right? Like, deport the homeless to the desert, right? Like, let them figure it out. But it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. You can't just ship people away. You have to ship them somewhere. And so, the goal has been to equitably distribute people across Los Angeles, to not, have concentration camps, essentially. They were even talking about the mansion tax that they passed in Los Angeles, that it's called Measure ULA, that post-wildfire, the mansion tax should be suspended because, you would need to suspend it across the entire city in order to address, the Palisades. It's kind of silly. I mean, the wealthy have the resources. It's getting the resources to the table that's the persistent challenge. And I mean, if they want more resources, prove their case, right? Prove you can track the money, prove you have a program that works, right? That there's a model there, that you can, kind of use, right? But like, we don't have that. And it came up today. This is something I've been saying for like a year now. I'm like, where is the model for success on homelessness? And the answer is there is no model. There's no best practices that have been identified. There's no plan. And the audit had some nice recommendations, but it didn't quite get into that level of weeds of what should, a model homelessness program look like. And like, that's a pretty standard thing for a lot of programs, right? You should have like what your ideal is for how you work with your clients. And so, I mean, as far as, right, you have different types of audits. You have, forensic financial audits, you have performance audits to fail on both counts, right? To not be able to do, financial forensics and then to not be able to highlight, positive performance is a real issue. The best they could come up with today is that there's isolated success stories. And like, I'm sorry, like, it's just not good enough. And I would like to tell more success stories. I mean, I think the real issue is like getting the providers to let the media in is very challenging. They don't even want to let the auditors in. And I mean, of course, right, like, the media has a oversight, a watchdog role. It's supposed to find, juicy stories, right? But like, it's also, it's supposed to analyze. It's supposed to, conduct, a broad view of what is going on. And I mean, to the extent that I have been able to engage people who, do work for the service providers, they too go, this is massively complicated. Particularly what's known as the coordinated entry system. So if you become unhoused, right, and you get contacted by an outreach worker for the city or the county, they're supposed to enter you into this system called the coordinated entry system. And that goes into a database called the Homelessness Management Information System, and HMIS. And the amount of information that you need, right, is significant. And the system will allow you to enter people repeatedly. So we don't even have an accurate database, right? And this is literally millions of dollars going, on right here to not have an accurate database of who is on the streets. We're double counting, we're getting double billed. It's a nightmare. It shouldn't be happening like that. There should be more of a functioning safety net. And the fact that they do this more successfully elsewhere, I mean, do we need to send consultants to other cities to figure this out? There's a lot of smart people in LA. After a while too, I noticed, right, it's pretty much the same people who show up to this thing. A lot of the experts who are out there who could, show up to this don't show up. A lot of the neighborhood groups don't show up. Even a lot of the government, entities do not show up, right? Like, the mayor shows up, but none of her subordinates. And if you don't know, particularly, I was surprised. I never see the leadership from HACLA, the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles, really there. I don't know. HACLA is kind of a weird agency. I mean, their goal, right, is to provide housing, affordable housing for people in Los Angeles, and yet, it seems like nobody gets it. Or when they do, right, or they already have, right, it's a complete struggle to not have the rent raised on you, right, out of oblivion, to not be evicted for spurious reasons. People can't make rent. The rent is high and it's always increasing. And then the cost of evicting people and, forcing them into this, desperate situation is even higher. So of course, there's an incentive to keep people from being wrongfully evicted. And so there must be more money coming for that soon. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not quite a conspiracy theorist like the judge who thinks that, the politicians deliberately just, withheld this county audit until after the last election when they could get the money voted on. But maybe. And the county council, who's an attorney, right, who's getting paid probably at least $1,000 an hour to sit there, disputed that at the end. She's like, there's been some misstatements here, things that were not correct, and it's just like, nobody cares. If you're not going to stop an 80-year-old judge from thinking the politicians might be a little bit opportunistic and corrupt, good luck with that one. I mean, I'm not sure. I would need to see some emails. I'll have to public records request them or something. Which of course they'll stall on and they won't provide what you asked for. It's a fun game that we play. It's a very fun game that we play as journalists. Man, traffic is getting bad. I knew this was coming. I'm ready to go. I'm get me home. Thank God I have a bed to sleep in. But let me out of this grand experiment known as Greater Los Angeles, essentially. And the lines right between LA and the OC and Riverside and San Bernardino get kind of blurred. At a certain point, it all just looks the same. Suburbia. So I hope everybody is doing well. I'm going to have an article coming on this in probably a couple of days. I'm working on it with Ruth Ruthless, who's in fact an unhoused journalist herself, to try to get, the story as right as we can, as fast as we can, with as much depth. And I like depth. Some people, they want, just the bullet points, but I like it when a story has some real depth to it. I think it makes the information that you put out more valuable because it's more complete. And in some ways it's aggregating information, but it's also analyzing the aggregate. to try to really, really get at some of these questions. And I have some real questions, particularly about what the next steps are. At what point does the judge either take an action against the city and the county or launch further investigation? And like, personally, I would be sticking the U.S. Attorney's Office on this already. I would like to see some serious federal authority going to the Homeless Services Authority and literally inspecting some of this, because clearly they could not do this with civil, privately hired auditors. So, you know what, maybe the U.S. Attorney's Office has to do it. I mean, they certainly have capacity there. Maybe you can make a fraud case out of it. And I mean, fraud is a beautiful crime. I mean, to catch somebody, committing fraud, whether we're talking about, mail fraud or wire fraud, there's some really fine differences between those, as far as communications and how that fits into the federal statute. I think it could be happening. Like, I don't think that there's zero fraud in all of this money that's either, resulting in an underserve or misappropriation. And supposedly they didn't find anything gross, but I'm not sure they would know. Like, the best they could come up with was that some of the providers had spent money on things like Amazon and Walmart and the Apple Store. And you go, okay, well, did you buy an iPad, right, for the program? Did you buy lunch for everybody, right? Like, is that what the taxpayer money is going to? And if so, like, why can't you track it better? Just kind of where we're at. My eyes are getting sore. It's like been a long day already, and I'm stuck in traffic. Like, send pizza and donuts again, please. There's only so much staring at a screen you can do. I'm gonna get where I'm going eventually. And this is like normal traffic too. But yes, I drove like 3 hours today to get to this. I'm gonna drive like 3 hours going back. Been up since like 5:15 a.m. It's just a dark, rumbling highway. And if you don't know, of course, these trucks that you see, right, are carrying goods across state lines quite often to fill your stores. So it's kind of just like the price that we pay of being the logistics hub of the United States. And I'd like to think that California is still a great place to live, that California has positive things, right? That, there's a huge flag over there, that, we are a really bright star among, the states. But a lot of people, right, they really rag on California. They go, California is a terrible example for other places. I don't know if California is terrible, but it's not doing great, that's for sure. And of course, Trump's thing, right, is, to make America great again. And if Trump wants to come out and try to fix homelessness policy in LA County, he is welcome. I mean, what are you going to do? Tell the President of the United States you can't come here? It's bizarre. A little air, maybe? Got a little stuffy in here. It's like a choice of air or breathing exhaust fumes. Probably not the most exciting stream. It does not have people yelling at each other. But we had a very serious discussion about homelessness today. As I slowly make my way back to the desert. Life will go on. Oh, there goes a cop. Oh, it's more money for the police. But this morning we had a really lively discussion. I think, people who understand how bad this situation is, after a while you get really passionate about it. You're like, why can't I help more people? Helping people, it's supposed to feel good. You're supposed to want to do it. It's not supposed to be something that is laborious, that is, difficult to do. You should want to help people. And I mean, certainly a lot of people begrudge the idea, right, of somebody getting, something for nothing. They call it begging, grifting, whatever. But I mean, if you're really looking for scammers, check out the homeless industrial complex. And they get mad when you call them that. I've had people go, well, it's inflammatory that you say that. And I go, well, that was the language used in a federal court hearing today. Is it really that inflammatory? I can't believe it's almost 8. It's past 8 p.m. and I'm still stuck in this traffic. I would love to just fly like an eagle. Burning that MPG. Pin carbon up. Where is everybody going? I mean, I guess people are going home. Some people are going to the bar. I don't know, kids got sports practice. It's a little late to go to church. Breathe. Breathe in that wonderful freeway air. But I hope everybody's doing well. I don't wish ill on people. I mean, I think that, karma is real. People who, do the right thing will get rewarded, and those who are engaged in misconduct will eventually meet punishment. And nobody should be wrongfully punished, right? There's a right punishment and a wrong punishment. And when people, are rightfully punished, right, for accountability, that's not necessarily a bad thing. They might think it's bad. Nobody wants to be the person in trouble. But people who, are getting caught doing the wrong thing, sometimes you have to have accountability. Stop and go. Stop and go. It's just never-ending traffic. I think I still have at least another hour or two. I think my projected drive time was almost 3 hours. Let me out of LA. Get a little defrost going. Merging. It was an okay day. The weather was frankly the weather was kind of mediocre. At least Club Fed has good air conditioning. It's a nice courthouse. I wouldn't want to spend the entire day in Superior Court necessarily. There's only so much Superior Court you can take. Ralph's. If you didn't know, Los Angeles is actually the grocery capital of America. It's the largest grocery market. And then it's also the biggest hub for exports. Perhaps, I think even more than New York. Their supply chain right there. Maybe I'm gonna get out of this? All right, here we go. Time to fly. Fly like an eagle into the future. I know there will be some traffic, but yikes. That person's going. kind of a overcast, cloudy night. And shout out to all the people who are real supporters, who show up, who have, contributions to, the discussion. And, I mean, hopefully, right, like, it's nice to think, right, you can make a difference. That by engaging, right, in public discourse, that there's a positive contribution that can be made by smart and talented individuals. That, you can make the world a better place. Like, we should want to make the world a better place. Whether we're talking about the housed or the unhoused, we should all want this world to be a better place. Instead, so often, we're like, just strangers passing each other in cars. It's a sad reality. And in no small part, like, our social sort of alienation, right, is kind of fed by this, like, essentially a bully culture. And to the extent that I thought, the judge is kind of like bullying politicians, it's kind of fun to watch. If you haven't watched a federal judge yell at politicians, come to the courthouse in May. I might even post the date. It'll be quite the show. I mean, it's kind of like if you knew people who were dying, right? Like, people are dying, right? 7 or 8 unhoused people die every day in Los Angeles, and you did nothing. Like, are you complicit? And like, I was an argument especially clear today, right? That inaction sometimes, right, when you should be doing the right thing, amounts to a degree of complicity. Absolute riot. I wish city council meetings were that entertaining. And like, you can't live stream inside of a federal courtroom. It is what it is. Like, that's supposed to be the serious, space, right? You're talking about a U.S. district courthouse. And I've been to appeal court too for the Ninth Circuit. That has a very serious, feeling too. But certainly, LA City Council does not have a serious feeling, and it's really not just the gadflies who make that. It's the politicians. They have a total disrespect for the public. They don't meet when the public is available at night. They only meet in the mornings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. And there's not a whole lot of sincere discussion and debate happening there so often. Very occasionally they'll debate something, they'll have an expressing of views, but they don't interact. There's not a lot of dialogue. You never see them interacting. They just sit there. They chat with their staff, they snack, they talk with their invited guests, but very rarely do they ever interact with the public. And like, certainly, like, that's one thing I found impressive with Audit LA, is that she actually gets them to interact with her. I've seen her get more reaction from Tuma Coster and Imelda Padilla than so many other people who go to council meetings get out of the politicians. They just act like you're not there. It's really quite clever. I'm like, okay, like, I have to go up, to this job. I'm gonna get paid $200,000+, and I'm just gonna act like the public isn't there, right? Like I don't have to worry about things. Just fake it till you make it. And that is Los Angeles. A very, very inarguably fake place. And people are surprised, right, that people come there and they rob the place blind. Now I'm making some progress. And like, last night I spent like an hour and a half on the phone with a source trying to work through a situation, trying to figure out how to address an organization like the LAPD that's very moribund. And like, I mean, I think LAPD is making some progress, but more needs to be made. Like, you know, it's one thing to hate the police. You know, I used to like when people said that, you know, that they were not anti-cop, but anti-corruption, because I think that's the right view to have, right? Like, you know, sometimes, right, you know, the police are necessary, and then other times, you know, they are corrupt. You know, sometimes the police help people. You know, particularly they've gotten better about, you know, mental health calls, but last week they shot somebody again who was not armed, and that cannot happen. It's a, you know, in addition to the loss of life, it's a huge expense. All those liability payments, all those settlements, and you know, you'd like to think that they learned their lesson, but I don't know what it takes for some people to learn. Whether it's the police or the homeless industrial complex, learning is a process. Maybe a little bit closer. I gotta be careful because one time I missed my turn. Flying. Little by little, destinations. But shout out to everybody who's a supporter. I appreciate you helping make journalism happen. Real journalism. Not that fake shit. Don't bring that fake stuff. And you know, I just hope that like people don't fall for things that are just not true. But sadly, right, like we are entering this very troubled era in which reality is getting divorced from facts. And you don't have to believe in truthiness to understand that we should want facts. We should want reality. We shouldn't want puff, PR, excuses to rule supreme, right? Like, there should be a real there. People should be real, because real isn't just what sells, it's what's good. Now we're going. Trusty Honda Civic. My car needs some love though. I definitely have some repairs I'd like to do. Oh, lovely. I just got the headline. Trump is going to investigate the LA Sheriff's Department over long wait times for gun permits. Great. Let's put more guns out there. Thanks, Trump. That's going to go well. Because you know what the world needs? It needs more guns. Not more compassion, not more humanity, more guns. Always more guns. And I've been through a school shooting scare. Like when it's your school that you're worried is getting, shot up, you go like, what the hell went wrong? How did we mess this up so badly? And the answer is not just mental health, but assault weapons and semi-automatic handguns for everybody. Anybody who wants one, just get an assault weapon. I mean, it was a terrifying experience. And like, this is what we accept for 21st century America, is a society that is incapable of reforming itself. And people are going to go, well, you're just a liberal. You're just a lib. Okay. if that's all you have, right, to go, well, you're just a lib. I mean, what are you doing to make the world a better place? How much, skin are you willing to put in the game? When it's your kid, right, in that school, or when it's your brother or your sister, right, living in a tent who you can't help, it's going to get real for you. That's life. Life is not easy. Life is not simply about the easy route. Sometimes things get hard. A little bit of yawn there. Here we go. Very slowly. But maybe I should listen to some tunes. So shout out to everybody who tuned into this, who's listening to this, who wants to know about our homelessness crisis, who wants to understand why our reality, our ability to deal with things, right, in an adult, mature way has gotten so difficult. And thank you to everybody who's reading the Substack. Great story up yesterday on Lillian Carranza, or LAPD whistleblower. And I'm going to have more good stuff coming for you. So everybody, I'm going to finish this drive. Have a wonderful rest of your night. And, please be well. We won't make people watch hours and hours of streams just to go, what did Zach say? And I think I'm going to listen to some Avicii, because I love me Avicii. He was a good dude, and he is missed. Shout out to Tim for making all that good music. And folks, have a wonderful rest of your night. I'm going to give it 1 minute here, and then I'm going to be out. I'm out.